Frank with Landscape Rehab, and today we are going to put together a water feature. This water feature we're making out of this nice big pot right here. Now, when you're picking out anything to make a water feature, make sure that you can have something either flow in it or flow over it when you're choosing some kind of a water feature. This one happens to have a pre-drilled hole in the bottom. This is a 1/2 inch PVC pipe. So it was very easy for me to put this pipe right on into the hole. Now, if this pot does not have one, what you're going to have to do is drill in your own hole. Now, to do that, you want to use small little drill bits and make a circular pattern all the way around, and then punch out the hole when you start making that hole. You cannot use a large drill bit when you're going through a big ceramic pot like this. So center it up, put your pot, and then put your pipe on inside the hole. Next thing we're going to do is, I take it and I raise it up and put it on 2 blocks, and then I have a smaller block underneath, so that now my pipe sits on the small block, and it gives me room once I get ready to put the feature together to use the piping and put the piping in on the bottom. So all I do is set the pot up, put the pipe in the hole, and then I will put a piece of tape on top of the hole, because when I start filling it with a little bit of concrete to anchor it in, we do not want any concrete to go inside this hole, because then it will start clogging up and your water feature will not work properly. So that's very important. Put a couple pieces of tape on here, make sure nothing gets into this hole right here. I just use any type of concrete mix. This one I used a fast set concrete. I just slopped it up, put it in here, and let it dry for a couple days. I've only got it about 3 inches deep at the most. All you want to do is make sure that it plugs out the bottom. I centered the pipe by using tape, and so everything is ready to roll. Next stage, what we're going to be doing is we're going to start digging the pit, which is the concrete block pit where the water is going to be circulating from. And then it's going right in this area over here. So I'll be back after we start digging this nice pit, and I'll show you step by step on what we're doing. Right, now you see that we do have the pit dug. What I did was I take a block, and I want to make sure that this is going to be below grade level. So we are good. So we have a good set on our depth of our pit here. And then of course I leveled everything off. So when I check everything out, I put a level on all the different areas to make sure that this is nice and flat and level, because this is what our water feature is going to be sitting on. We want to make sure it's nice and level. So as you notice, we have the really poor soil here, and we have a ton of these little rocks in here. So the next phase of what we're going to do is, I got a little secret, is we're going to line this with cardboard. What that's going to do is it's going to give us a buffer between these small rocks and our rubber lining, because we do not want any of these little rocks to puncture our lining. So that's what we're going to do next. Okay, here we got our framework right now set in. What we have is our framework. It consists of 2.5 blocks. So this is going to give us enough water volume to put the pump in and circulate the water throughout the water feature itself. We also have the cardboard on the bottom. This is going to take and make sure that none of those little pebbles or rocks are going to pierce our rubber lining. And what this does is, now what it allows us is it degrades over the long haul. It's going to be just set in there. That's why I like using the cardboard. It's just going to kind of melt away eventually. So what I'm going to do now that I measured out everything properly, I'm going to take back out the block, and then we're going to put in the lining and then start reinserting the block back in. Everything looks like it's going to work just perfectly. All right, now we have the block set back in over top of the liner. We put the liner nice and easy back. Blocks fit in perfectly. Notice how I put the blocks in so that the water can also go in here. That also increases the volume of water that's going to come through the pump and go through the fountain itself. So this is all set. Now what we want to do is pull the lining back and then backfill up tight up to our blocks. Okay, now we have everything in place. You notice we backfilled this really nicely. I even carved down the sides a little bit because remember, we're putting a grate on top of this and we're going to put stone on top of the grate. So now this will all be matched with the level of the existing ground we got. This is the critical part because we have to make sure that this part is going to be level. This is where the urn that we have, our bubbling urn, is going to be sitting on top. So we're going to put the level in. We measured it once already. We're looking good. We're looking good. Now we can put the other block in, and this is what the urn is going to be sitting on. Okay, now we have our two blocks in place. Again, we put them so that we have the hollowness in this area. Again, that's going to be where the water is going to be coming at. And our pot or urn, bubbling urn, is going to be on top of that with a pipe right in between. This will allow me to run the pipe through here and connect it up to this pump. This is a 300 gallon per hour pump. And that will sit right down in this area here. Pipe comes in here with an attachment going right up into our pipe that's through our pot, and then that will create the bubbling urn. Okay, I looked at all this pot here and I've determined that this is my prettiest side right here. This is also a good looking side and a good looking side here. There happens to be kind of a seam on the back side, so I want that facing the shrubs. So this is my 90-degree pipe fitting. This is going to go on the bottom of the pipe so that it goes towards the pump itself. As you notice, it just fits right on. So I'm going to now put this pipe cement around this, put it on so that it shoots out towards where my pump's going to be. Okay, when I bought this pump, this is, like I said, a 300 gallon per hour pump. It does have these fittings on there. It comes included in here. So this one is a female that screws into this one. This is also a water valve, which means you can adjust the amount of water that comes from this and goes over here. So it's really nice to have this because when you assemble this, you can adjust how high or low you want this water to go out of this pot here. So we, again, screw this on. Now you have to, what I always do is I bring this piece right here to the local hardware store. And then I'll find a piece, which is this one, and that will screw into this, and this is where the pipe is going to join that one and the one we just put into the bottom. Very easy, just bring the piece with you, find the right one. Again, this is a 1/2 inch fitting, and you're good to go. Okay, now we're going to put the pump down. It fits right real nicely inside our little groove here. And then we're going to measure from this distance here to our pipe. And that will tell us how much pipe we need to go and fit inside there. So we just take our little measurement. And you could be a little bit off because we have some room in here to adjust. It looks like it's going to be about 6 inches. So we're going to cut a pipe, 1/2 inch pipe, 6 inches. Glue it in here, slide it in, and we're all ready to go. Okay, we're in good shape now. We've got our pump in, pipe in, going all the way up to the top. And again, what we did was we taped the top because we don't want to get any rock in here. And we're going to start filling this up with drain rock. Drain rock is a very porous rock. It's just going to give us some weight. Doesn't matter what's going to be in here because again, we're going to concrete a top layer on here, and that's just going to allow a little bit of water to be on the top. So I'm going to start filling with rock. We're going to be putting in a concrete layer. That's going to create a really nice watertight seal. So what I did was over top of the drain rock, I put this weed mat. So that's going to keep the concrete from soaking into the stone. And we're going to shoot for a level about yay much on the concrete. So just about maybe 1 inch to 2.5 inches on the top of this. We're going to smooth it out and we're going to let that set. Okay, we're heading down the home stretch on this water feature now. As you notice, I've got some tape. After I got done with the concrete, this has been a day later, it's all set and looking really nice. But what I did was, while this was still soft and wet, I took and made sure that this little piece in here was centered perfectly. So what I did was I just measured out the distances and tried to get that right in the middle. It was a little crooked because sometimes the holes when they drill them in these pots are not exactly right. So we bent it over a little bit and now it's in really good shape. So next thing we're going to be doing is we're going to level this pot up. This pot, again, is not perfectly flat on the bottom. We do have some areas where it's a little bit tilted towards this section here. So what we're going to do now is we're going to level the pot, and we're going to use some heavy-duty plastic shims for that. The reason why we're using plastic is it won't degrade over the water. Wood shims will actually run out, and then it will start tilting down. A nice solid plastic will keep it nice and firm. So I'm going to shim it up and then get it nice and level. Now we're going to be using a plastic screening to hold up the stone, which is going to be going on top of our layer. You can get this at any hardware store in a fencing section. And this is like, I think this is a quarter or a half-inch square. And what I did was I measured it out the size that I want, lengthwise, and then I put a large slit in it, not quite halfway through, because we're going to slide this underneath the water feature, and then we're going to slide another piece on the other side. And eventually we're going to go ahead and zip tie it together. And that will hold all of our stones that we're going to be placing on this on top and make a beautiful grate system. Okay, we firmly zip tied both sides together. We slipped one this way with a slit, we slid one this way with a slit, and then we zip tied both sections together. Now I'm just going to finish trimming them off. And now we're ready to put the stone in here, and then also fill this pump up, fill the pit up, put the pump on, and then we're going to test out where we want to go as far as the water goes, as far as the height, the distance, and again we have the valve to do that with. So this is our next stage. Next stage, we got this all nice and level, screening is underneath. Now we're going to cut this pipe. We're going to cut this pipe, is going to be about 1 inch below level area. So I put the level back on, take my tape measure, get 1 inch, and then cut it down at that point. What this is going to do is then I'm going to put the stone on top of this, and then when the water comes up, it's just going to bubble up and over, nice and easy. And then when it recedes, it's going to go all the way back down to the level of this pipe, and that way there's not going to be any standing water in here, which is really important. So this is going to be a very low maintenance type of water feature. All right, we got our pipe cut. Now we're just going to fill this basin with some stone. Now what I chose is black slate. It looks gray now, but when it gets wet, it's all dusty, it'll turn more of a black. If you notice also, I also have a black rock, and this was actually a yellow cap rock. And so what I did was I used a concrete dye and dyed these. The owners had a bunch of these laying around, and I have stone accents throughout the landscaping, which I'll show you later. And in order to save them money, we dyed these a nice black, so when this stone goes with this, it's going to look like it's all tied together. The last thing you want to do is have two different types of stone. It just doesn't work that way in nature, so you want to try to keep the palette the same color all the way through your water feature. Browns with browns,
black with black,
grays with grays, those type of things. Okay, top is covered. Now if you notice, I did put tape again on top of this after I cut it, because we don't want any stone pieces to fall down into that. So I'm going to remove this, I'm going to fill up this pit, and then we're going to start and practice run just to see where we're at. And then we'll also adjust the amount of water we want coming out of here. So that's our next stage. Okay, we filled up this pit just far enough to cover up the pump, because we don't want the pump to go dry. Put a little bit of water in here just to cover up to the pipe level, and now we're going to plug it in and see where we're at. Everything seems to be working fine. I kind of like the flow the way it's going, but again, we do have a valve in here, and I'm going to show you how this is important, because if you don't want that much water, you can actually turn it down and have a little bit of cascade. But if you want a little bit more, you just turn up the valve and get a little bit more pressure. I'm going to leave it like this, and because I like a little bit of movement on here. It's just cascading really nicely along the pot itself. Just a little bit of shimmer, and once the lights are on this in evening time, this is even going to look better. Okay, the only thing we have left now is to put our stone down. Again, we're going to be using the same stone that we have inside the pot. And what I like to do is to keep the stone and the mulch from washing into this, I have a real thin little piece of edging in here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this down, shape a nice little shape where the stone's going to be inside this, Once I get that done, I'm going to trim off the plastic, and we're all ready to go. So I'm going to put it on this side and the bed side, fill it with stone, and then we'll see what it looks like. Okay, we finally got the finished product. As you notice, the water is very cloudy because all the stone usually has dust in it. And it takes about a day to day and a half to really go cycle through and clean it up. So you're always going to get this haze until about a day or two. So what I'm going to do is recap everything that we just did to make this happen. First of all, we chose a pot, an urn, any type of structure that you want to see water coming over, you could probably make a water feature. This one already had a hole drilled. It's usually a 1/2 inch, so I used a 1/2 inch pipe. If it does not have a hole in it, what you want to do is create a hole by taking a small drill bit, a concrete drill bit, do several holes all the way around in a circular pattern, and then tap it out. Never try to use a large drill bit, you'll crack your pot. So we did all the pipe work. So we put the pipe down, we put it in concrete, we set it down, and let it set overnight. Next stage was to build our pit. We dug a nice pit in here. We used a concrete block, and we used the rubber liner. Now if you notice, this just recycles and goes down and comes back again. There will be no standing water in here, so there will be no mosquito problem, and everything just goes down in here, so the evaporations will be very little. Once we got our pit dug, we make sure everything was measured properly. We set your urn down on top of the block. Make sure there's a canal so that the pipe underneath would be able to run to the pump itself. Once we had all that done, we fill the pot with drainage rock, and then we put another layer of concrete so that we don't get that whole thing filling with water. We have a small concrete thing. We let that cure for a whole day. Then we put that top with stone. So we cut the pipe down 1 inch below, put the stone on top to that level. Once this goes down, it will suck down, there won't be any standing water in here. Then all we did was put our screening in, secured the screen with zip ties, covered with stone, and turned it on. And that's all we did to make this water feature happen.